Right. Please, for the love of goodness sake, let this work. This is the last time I'm going to attempt this. I'm going to try and see if I can get myself on the PlayStation to check myself whether this stream is going to be going well enough. So, but I'm going to try and very quickly get through everything as much as possible, and then I'm going to leave it in case something else ends up happening. But quickly back to the point I was going to make. I was starting to get towards reviewing the end, to get to the end of sort of looking back at Sunderland's window. So let's check. Right, the fact that nobody's watching makes me think that this has gone off again. Let's have a look. Oh, this is going to be so annoying. Hang on. Right. Let's have a look. Settings. No, that's not what I want. Hold on. Okay. Can everyone who's watching this chat actually see and hear me okay? Because this is getting ridiculous. Tell me below if you can see or hear me. If you can, I'll quickly get onto it. If not, I'm just going to leave it. I want to try and see if I can welcome back. Yeah, third time bloody lucky, I suppose. Let's have a look. Check and see what's like. Okay, we seem to be going okay at the moment. Right. I'll quickly to everyone who's watching in the chat. What rating would you give the transfer window out of 10? For me personally, I said originally a 6. Originally, I said a 6 out of 10 because I felt like not getting, that was in the immediate aftermath of deadline day and not getting another striker. Especially when I said before that before Clark was sold, I didn't have any problem with not going out and splashing money on players. But now that Clark had been sold and we had money to play with, I did think it was poor not to go all out and try and push for someone like a Tom Cannon, for instance. But having said that, I really hope that Mienda does continue to form up over the course of the season. And by the way, I'm just watching myself on the screen, which is a bit weird. But it seems to be okay. It seems to be all right for the moment. But I think if Mienda keeps up this form, then absolutely fantastic. I have no problem with it whatsoever. It's just a big ask to get him to keep up that standard across the whole season. But, as far as Jack Clark goes, as I mentioned in the last stream, or attempted to say in the last stream, he deserved to move to the Premier League. Ian Hart, quite frankly, is a bell end. I really do not like him at all. But Jimmy, for now, we're back. We'll see how long this lasts. But thanks to everyone who's been patient with me throughout this, because I can imagine this has been a very weird experience or surreal for people watching me just sort of stutter and go, and be stuck like that a load of time. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Michael, mate. It's like being a dream with our start. Yes, it is, which is very, very nice. 12 points from the first 4. We'll have to wait and see. Reconvene at Christmas, absolutely. Kevin Caden, yes, Michael. I'm assuming this means that you can hear me. But yeah, so I would say 7 out of 10. I like the signings of Metham. I think Brown looks very good. I think that so far anyway, I think Poveda has potential to be a really, really good signing. We've obviously signed Alexic, who apparently is really highly rated, but judgment's out on him. Samedi, again, apparently very, very highly rated, but I've not watched him play, so I'm not going to confess to know anything. And I think if you look at another part of the transfer window that I didn't mention before was the fact that we've kept Dan Neil, Chris Rake, Joe Bellingham, Dan Ballard, Trey Hume, Anthony Patterson, Patrick Roberts. We've kept hold of a lot of really, really good talent. And I think I'll ask people this: would you have if you'd been offered this at the start of the window, would you have taken it? You lose Jack Clark, which a lot of us suspected would happen anyway, but it means you tied Chris Rigg down, which is the big one. You keep hold of him and give him a new contract, which I think is a big plus in the window. You tie Joe Bellingham down to a contract for another 4 years, basically. Same with Dan Ballard. Dan Neil stays. Trey Hume and Anthony Patterson all stay. You keep every other asset. It just meant that Clark leaves. The thing as well is, I probably would have taken that if I'd been offered that at the Sheffield Wednesday home game at the end of last season, where I said at the time that would be Jack Clark's last home game. Well, it turns out it was. It was just Sheffield Wednesday at home the following season. But we'll wait and see. I think that ultimately I would give it a 7 because some of the signings we've made have been seen to, on paper, on the surface, seem to be very good ones. But time will tell how much we're going to miss not pushing the boat out for a striker. But as far as Mundell goes, like Mundell could very well step up to replacing Jack Clark. So I actually think there's going to be really, really good. I think there's a lot of potential there to look really, really good. So 7 out of 10 for me. What do you guys think? Everyone who's watching, what rating would you give the window out of 10? Obviously, look, I think people are looking at it a bit more positively because we've made such a fast start and really, really good start. But I also think that, again, I think the start so far, we'll see if it continues to, but so far, I think it backs up the point what I've been saying, that this team's not a bad team. They just needed a really, really good head coach to lead the line with them, basically, and that we were really mismanaged from Mulberry onwards last year, basically. Alexa is with the Serbian national team right now. Fair enough. Minton says, although we lost to Sheffield United, the under 24 on forward line against Liverpool was very exciting. Pace, creativity, and finishing, modern forwards. Fair enough. Kevin says, knew Dodds was going to be kept on as part of the backroom team. Dodds, I haven't got a problem with being kept on as a backroom member of staff. And I want to make that clear, as a backroom member of staff. If we're talking in terms of head coaches, then I don't want Dodds anywhere near there. But the thing is now, last season, before he replaced Mowbray effectively for that interim spell, we didn't really know. I mean, he had a spell in League One, but like in general, we didn't really know how much he was going to be suited to head coach and being a manager. Basically, the one good thing about last year was that we now know that he's not up to the standard. At least not he won't be at Sunderland in the near future. So that's the only thing, because we didn't know that until we tried it properly, and now we know that it's probably it's not going to be the case. Jimmy says, I think the level of standards for what is acceptable and what is not has been risen this season. Last season under Mowbray, Beale and Dodds, the standards were too low. I agree. I completely agree with you. Under Labrise, the bar's been set high for a high minimum. Absolutely. And I would imagine under Labrise, if he continues these standards, the minimum we want to accept as a group is playoffs, and that's at worst. But again, it's one thing saying it, it's another one doing it. Jimmy says, again, 8 out of 10 as there are signings we don't know about, and Clark's amount was a bit low, but Brown on a free is genius. Yeah, I think there's more positives than negatives to the window, but it is still a bit frustrating. It is still a bit frustrating in the sense that we didn't really go out and push for a proven forward. But again, if Meander scores, say, 10 goals and Mundell gets, say, 7 to 10 goals, then ultimately Clark's goals right there are replaced, aren't they? And I got to remember, Joe Bellingham's another year older. Chris Rigg is looking really, really good at the moment. He'll need to be managed across the season, but you're talking about Alan Brown can step in and really step up to the plate, basically. I think that you've obviously got Samedi coming in, depending if he's good. Like I said, my main frustration, I suppose, that fullback and striker, we look a little bit light. But I wouldn't be surprised if Metham partners Ballard down the line across the season, and it meant that 09 is basically turned into cover for the entire back four. That's what I wouldn't be shocked if that happens, but I also wouldn't be shocked if I'm being a conspiracy theorist on that. So I think ultimately, as I said, I think 7. If we had either kept Clark or brought in a really good forward, then I would have probably given it an 8 or a 9. But the fact we've kept most of our talent, I think, is actually really promising. I think we've managed somehow to keep a lot of our talent already there. And the thing is, these guys will get better. The more experience they get, the older they'll get, the better decision making they'll get. It's like sort of, Ballard, for example, is already one of the best centre backs in the Championship. I think Bellingham will have a really good year. I've backed him from the start of the summer to have a really good year this year. I think Rigg, as long as he's managed properly, I think will take the league by storm, and so far he is. We've had opposition fans have been saying, wow, Chris Rigg looks good. Sheffield Wednesday and Portsmouth fans have said this after we've played them, that Chris Rigg looks really good. And as I've said, if we don't get promoted this season, then Rigg is almost certainly going to be off next summer. But yeah, there's a lot of early promising signs, and obviously 4 wins from 4. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what ends up happening. Kevin says, what do some fans think of Speedman now? I'll answer that question in a minute, actually. But Jimmy says, I worry about the left back situation. As Sirkin is so good, but if he gets injured, we have nobody good enough to play there. Again, I think I wouldn't be, if that happens, I think 09 will get shifted to what I would do is shift 09 to left back and put Metham with Ballard, but have Ballard as the left centre back next to 09, so the partnership still isn't lost. Which I know it's not the same thing as having 2 centre backs playing next to each other, but either way, I think the left back position does concern me, because it's a shame, because I really like Sirk and he is very, very good. But the problem is he's made of glass, isn't he? So we've got to make sure we wrap him in cotton wool. Now, to answer Kevin's question, what do I think of Speedman now? I still stand by that. I think he has done a lot more good for the club than bad. And I think a lot of people revise their opinion based entirely on last season. And by the way, last season he deserved a lot of stick, because Beale being appointed was a joke. And I suspect that is probably Speakman's appointment. And in which case, I was glad he was nowhere near selecting the head coach, because I wouldn't be surprised if Labrise was more KLD sort of man. I think he deserves criticism over not addressing the proven striker thing. And I understood it again before we sold Clark, but now you've sold Clark. We don't really have an excuse not to go out and spend more. And I think as well, the wage structure is the big thing. Because I wouldn't be surprised if because we did go in for someone like Tom Cannon. We put a permanent bid in for him, but the wages seem to be the issue. Now, that's the one big thing that needs to be. That's the one big thing that I think needs to increase. The wage structure has to go up if we're wanting to get back to the Premier League, because ultimately you're going to have to start spending just that bit extra. And when we're talking about spending, we're not saying go out and spunk loads of money. We're not go out and saying, oh, splash money left, right, and centre. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is, if say Tom Cannon wanted 25 grand a week and Sunderland weren't willing to go above 18, for example, and this is just an example, by the way, I'm just using this to back my point up. Sometimes you need to have a bit of flexibility from both sides in the middle. And that's where I think we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think with Speedman, I still really like him, but I think there probably will come a point, even I admit, where we outgrow him, I think. But there you go. I will say this to back off what Jeff was saying. Tom Cannon said he only wanted a loan move to a club near Manchester only. Now, I will admit this. If that's the case, that's not on the club. You can't blame the club for that. But I do think that our insistence on holding to a wage structure as rigidly as we are will potentially hold us back. And again, I think wage structures are important. Chelsea in the Premier League, I believe, have got one. Premier League structures are important. Sorry, wage structures are important because you don't want to go out and get your wage bill gradually out of control to the point where you have to have administrators come in, for example. It's all about finding a balance. Dorman says, what makes you think RLB is KLD's man? I don't know for definite, mate. I have a suspicion. I have a suspicion that because of the French market, I think that KLD would have had something to do with that. But I could be wrong. If you know anything I don't, then please feel free to tell me in the chat. Jeff says, didn't RLB say if a fullback gets injured, he'll switch to a back three? Did he? Oh, well, I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to comments like in terms of press conferences and stuff, mate. So that's probably me being living under a rock. Trevor says, probably having to accept such a high profile player each season to fund the club. Yeah, I do get that. I think I've said all along that I think eventually, you will have to lose a player every sort of window. Like last summer it was Ross Stewart, this summer it was Jack Clark, and next summer, assuming we don't go up, then next summer it'll probably be one of Chris Rigg or Dan Neil, Dan Ballard maybe, or Joe Bellingham potentially. So I think if one big sale means you keep the rest of the squad and there's not too much turnover, and it means that the money you've got there means you can enable you to go for higher caliber of candidates, then fair enough, I'm all for that. Let's have a look. Jimmy says, I feel the club is in a far better position than before Speedman and KLD. I also think what's good about Speedman is they want to spend where they see value for the team and club. I definitely do agree with that, mind. I do think, in general, I think they've been very, very good. A lot. Last summer's recruitment wasn't that great, granted, or at least it doesn't appear to be. But at the moment, I would say that a lot of the deals they've done have been with high value. And I think, but strikers, I think more times than not, you need to go out and spend that bit more. And that's an exception rather than the overall rule. I understand you don't want to go out and cave into people's demands in terms of paying more, but there does come a point where eventually that will have to increase. Jamie says the World Group type signings are over. Thank God for that. That's all I'll say. Jeff says the Tom Cannon said, oh yeah, Tom, I already went to that point. Border Reaver. Hello from Germany, by the way. Hello. Someone from Germany watching me videos. That's insane. Let's have a look. From a POV of economic sustainability, what about keeping the wage structure tighter in a high interest rate environment, then relaxing once interest rates relax? Not a bad shout there, to be fair. That isn't a bad shout. Maybe you should put yourself forward to Christian Speakman, I suppose. Kevin says, did you see his interview where he said he was still looking at the free agent market? I think I did see a clip of him saying that. I'd be very surprised if we got anyone in on a free agent. But if there's someone out there who ends up helping us, then fair enough, I'm all for it. Jeff says, would Neil go first, seeing he hasn't signed a new contract that was offered? Seems the more likely, others are on longer terms. Now, this is one that I'm curious to think what people think of this. I wouldn't be surprised if this Samedi from Lens, we've got him in on loan to get him settled into the area. And then next summer, if we don't go up, Neil gets sold and Samedi is his replacement. That's the type of forward thinking that I think that we're trying to look at doing. I have to admit, Dan Neil's contract does concern me a bit. I never expected Jack Clark to sign one because of he'll be wanting Premier League money, and rightly so, by the way, he's deserved it. Dan Neil, I would have hoped by now would have been tied down to a contract, and that's the one that I'm thinking maybe he's the one that will be sold next summer if we don't get promoted. And if we don't go up next summer, then you've got to bear in mind he'll be entering the last 12 months of his contract, which means you're probably going to be lucky to get around 10 million, I would think, if I had to make an estimate. But yeah, no, I wouldn't. Jeff, I think that's a good chat. It wouldn't surprise me if Dan Neil's the one who gets sold. Well, we shall see. Hopefully, we're in a position where we go up and we can keep all of these players, as in this season. Jimmy says, Dan Neil could be sold in January for me, and I think we'd be better off. Interesting. I'm a big fan of Dan Neil. So I know if you mean better off in terms of finances, then maybe. But I think Dan Neil stays until the summer. But I might be wrong. Been wrong before. Will be again. Alt ending. Hello, there's the legend himself back again. Each window from his takeover, we have brought in a better caliber of player, though. 24 months ago, we could be signing 24 months ago, we couldn't be signing Isidore, that Serbian midfielder, for 3 million. That's very true. That is very true. Now, this is where I think, again, so this is where I keep saying selling in the Championship, unfortunately, is very, very important, because people pointed towards, like, say, Middlesbrough and Coventry, for those who are non-parachute payment teams that were spending money. But the difference is, Middlesbrough sold Chuba Akpom and Morgan Rogers in the last 12 months. And also, well, last 13, 15, 14 months, whatever it is. And then Coventry sold Victor Gyökeres and Gustavo Hamer for around 35 million quid altogether, maybe 40. And that meant they could then go out and reinvest the money that was coming in from player sales onto the team. So that's the whole point. I mean, if you look at it this way, unless I haven't seen many clubs spend anything in the Championship, really, unless they're a club with parachute payments, and a club that has made big sales recently and has reinvested sales accordingly. And that's where I think Sunderland are looking to try and be at. And obviously, the more bigger sales you make, the bigger expenditure you can spend on the first team. And obviously progress to another level, I mean, even though it is gutting you lose a player. Patrick says, how far are we into the 5-year plan? Now, as far as I'm going to start to wrap this up in a minute in case something goes wrong again. But I was saying to the 5-year plan, I think this is year 4 of the 5-year plan. So I think the first year was from their first full season their first full season in charge, which was the 21-22 season in League One, the year we got promoted. The second season would have been the year we got into the playoffs in the Championship. Last season would have been year 3. So this season's year 4. If I've got that right, this season's year 4. And then if we don't go up next summer, next season's year 5. So I suspect that the aim from the club now will be either this season or next season to get back into the Premier League. But I will say that we're quite far into it now. But obviously, we know it's so. I think we've kind of now got past the point, because to be fair to this recruitment team and this ownership, and I'll give KLD this, we have got promoted from League One when he was there. And I know that there were people that argued. I know Graham Falk of What the Falk was a great podcast, and he's a really good lad. But he made the argument, well, we couldn't have got much worse. We're in League One. Unfortunately, mate, it's Sunderland. We could have got much worse. Bolton Wanderers, see one example. But also, that's just simply where we were when they found us. That's just facts. Like, that's not an opinion, that's facts. So at the end of the day, we've got out of League One. We've re-established ourselves in the Championship. And we're now at the point where we should start. Well, I should say we're past the point of being re-established in the Championship and not looking downwards. We now should be at the point where we're looking upwards, and we're now at the point where we want to start looking at Premier League football now. Not obviously, I know we're not there into the Premier League. So I will give them that. Yeah, definitely improved. So yeah, sorry, Patrick, to answer your question, year 4 of 5 years in the 5-year plan, if I've read that right. Jimmy says, I think Neil's ball retention is poor and a risk of a red midst and a silly yellow or red. Rigg, Bellingham and Brown in the middle of the 3 we should be building around. See, I really like Dan Neil. I think we've missed Dan Neil a considerable. I think we proved it towards the end of last season when Dan Neil got injured, when I think we missed him considerably. But then again, we didn't have Rigg being a regular, not as much of a regular as he is now, and we didn't have Alan Brown in there. So I can see maybe the point you're making. I think, so quick go through some more of these comments. Jeff made a couple of points. Trent has been loaded out to play in the 6th position at Hibs to get in game time in that position. Fair enough. And I'd say it depends on how the Serbian mid-Milan settles. If he hits the ground running, Neil will not be the first choice if he doesn't sign an extension. Yeah, true. Maybe these signings are preparing in case Neil doesn't sign an extension and he ends up getting sold for that reason. We'll see. And then Minton says, Ipswich spent, but I don't mind our recruitment model. I do get the point people pointed towards Ipswich, because if Ipswich went up last year, then we should really be aiming for that this year. Not necessarily automatic promotion, although that'd be nice, but like at least getting into the playoffs and actually getting, right, I can see the stream on my computers, on my TV starting to both buffer up a little bit. So I'll start to wrap it up. All I'll say is for every Ipswich, there's a Hull. There's a Hull City in that they tried to go for it in terms of promotion and spending a lot. And Minton makes a good point. Ipswich did spend, but I would say that Hull spent, and look where they are now. So it's all about finding the right balance. That gamble Ipswich did, it works, providing it pays off. If it doesn't pay off, then you're kind of up shit creek without a paddle, basically. So it's all about balancing it. But we need to be back in the Prem, really, at some point. For the revenue of the club to go, for the capital of the club to grow, that's the level we're sustainable at. So we'll wait and see. Britley says, Neil's just been made captain. The signs must be encouraging that he'll sign. I hope so. I really do hope so, mate. I really like Dan Neil. I'm a massive fan of his. Right, guys, I think I'll start to leave it there because the last couple of times I tried to do this ended going tits up. So thankfully, it seems to be that the stream has gone all right, but we shall see. But anyway, last couple of comments before I go. Tam says, to be fair, our signings look good on paper, if not a little young on two of them, but let's wait and take the grass after 10 games. Then we can talk with a little more authority. Yeah, that's true. We need to remember that. We're only 4 games into the season. We have to remember that it's a long season, but we're off to a good start. But that is all we've done. It's a good start. Let's carry it up. Let's carry it on. Alton says, excellent reflections, mate. Speak for yourself. You're superb class. Superb to hear your thoughts. Thanks for persisting with the internet streaming. Yeah, I guess not giving up is a trait. But yeah. No, thanks very much everyone who's coming on, for watching. Jimmy says, cheers for the streams. I love it. Britley says, Rooney versus Labrise, can't wait. Thanks, pal. That'll be funny. Minton and Dortmund, both cheers. Thanks to the pair of you for watching. Jeff says, I think some of them all follow more Brentford model than a Brighton model. Yeah, that is very, very true. Brentford got promoted with a positive balance on the books. Yeah, we forget that. The year Brentford went up, they sold Ollie Watkins and then signed Ivan Toney, didn't they? So, yeah, you can do it. George says, how with 3 points next week? Yep. Fingers crossed for 3 points next week. Enjoy your international weekend, guys. I don't know what you're going to plan to do on a Saturday now. We're not playing, but yeah, thankfully it was a tricky road today with the streams, but we've got there in the end. We've got there in the end and managed to finish off my thoughts. This was originally going to be about 10 minutes, and knowing my style, I've waffled on for 22 minutes, basically. Anyway, guys, take care of yourselves and so with the lads. And again, stay safe as always. And then I'll see you next Saturday for after the Plymouth game. Unless Daniel signed a contract or something. But take care, guys, and enjoy your weekend.